In a world where chrome meets flesh, where underground cities hide humanity's last hope, and where love transcends the boundaries between human and machine. Welcome to a channel where dystopian futures come alive through epic storytelling. From cyberpunk romances to post-apocalyptic adventures, we craft immersive narratives that explore what it means to be human in worlds that have forgotten humanity. Join Maya and Zane in Fragments of Dawn, just the beginning of the stories waiting for you here. Hit subscribe and dive into worlds where every choice matters, every relationship defines survival, and every story challenges the boundaries of what's possible. Subscribe now because the future is written by those brave enough to imagine it. The Hunt. The neon-soaked rain hammered the twisted metal of Sector 7's abandoned overpass, each droplet carrying the electric tang of corporate pollution. Maya Chin pressed herself against the corroded support beam, her unaugmented eyes scanning the chaos below through night vision goggles she jury-rigged from salvage tech. No chrome gleamed beneath her skin, no neural ports dotted her skull. She was pure human in a world that had forgotten what that meant. The Enforcement Division's hunter-killers swept through the district like mechanical vultures, their enhanced sensory arrays painting the night in thermal signatures and biometric sweeps. But they couldn't see her. Pure humans registered as background noise to their augmented perception systems, a ghost frequency in their digital consciousness. It was the only advantage her kind had left. Below, gangs of chrome-skinned augments battled for territory with weapons that rewrote reality at the molecular level. The Neon Serpents held the eastern blocks with their light-bending camouflage, while the Iron Collective's cybernetic warriors carved through opposition with plasma-edged limbs. This was urban anarchy at its purest. No law, no order, just survival and the violent poetry of technological evolution. Maya's stomach clenched with familiar hunger. 3 days since her last real meal, 5 since she'd found clean water. The underground refuges were sanctuaries, but they were also prisons. Up here she could move freely, invisible to the machines that hunted augmented flesh. Down there, safety came with the cost of slow starvation and the gradual erosion of hope. A flash of movement caught her attention, someone running hard through the debris field of a collapsed megastore. Not the fluid, inhuman grace of full augmentation, but not entirely organic either. A hybrid, perhaps, or someone with minimal enhancement. The runner stumbled, blood trailing from what looked like a severe wound. The hunter-killers were closing in, their crimson targeting lasers painting geometric patterns across the ruined landscape. Maya's hand found the grip of her rail pistol, a relic from before the enhancement wars that could punch through most modern armor. She should stay hidden. Getting involved meant exposure, and exposure meant death. But something about the way the figure moved, the desperate human cadence of their breathing, made her pause. The runner looked up, and Maya saw a face that was still recognizably human despite the silver neural interface ports gleaming at the temples. Green eyes, real ones not synthetic, met hers across the distance. In that moment, something shifted in the chaotic landscape of her world. The hunter-killers were seconds away from their target. Maya made her choice. The rail pistol's charge built with a high whine that cut through the storm. Her first shot took out the lead hunter-killer's optical array, sending it spinning into a concrete barrier. The second punched through another's power core, dropping it in a shower of sparks. The remaining 2 units immediately shifted targets, their sensors finally registering the new threat. But they couldn't lock onto her. Pure human signatures slipped through their targeting algorithms like water through a sieve, a fatal flaw in their design that the underground cities had learned to exploit. They fired wildly, plasma bolts carving molten scars across the overpass as Maya moved like smoke through the shadows. The wounded runner had stopped, staring up at her with those impossibly green eyes. Blood ran down their face from a gash above the left temple, and Maya could see now that the augmentations were minimal, just the neural ports and what looked like enhanced reflexes. Barely augmented, caught between worlds like so many others who tried to straddle the line between human and machine. Move! Maya shouted, dropping down from the overpass with practiced ease. They'll call reinforcements. The runner nodded and pushed to their feet, favoring their left leg. Together, they plunged into the maze of collapsed buildings and tangled power conduits that made up the Rust Quarter. Behind them, more hunter-killers descended from the sky like metal angels of death, but they were already ghosts in the urban wilderness. As they ran, Maya caught fragments of her companion's scent, ozone and copper, the signature of someone who'd recently had neural work done. But underneath that, something purely human that made her pulse quicken in ways she'd almost forgotten were possible. "I'm Zane," the runner gasped as they ducked through a hole in what had once been a shopping mall's wall. "Maya," she replied, not knowing that this moment would become the first page in a story that would reshape both their worlds. And you're about to tell me why the ED wants you dead badly enough to hunt you through anarchy territory. The rain kept falling, washing away the blood but not the memories that would bind them together in the fragments of dawn breaking over their broken world. The confession. The abandoned subway tunnel stretched into darkness like a throat leading to the underworld. Maya led the way, her footsteps silent on the rusted tracks while Zane limped behind, one hand pressed against the wound in their leg. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting shifting shadows that turned every piece of debris into a potential threat. This deep beneath Sector 7, even the gangs rarely ventured, making it as close to neutral ground as existed in the urban anarchy. Neural interface work, Maya said without turning around, her voice echoing off the tunnel walls. Recent. I can smell the biosealant and fresh chrome. So what did you do? Steal corporate secrets, cross the wrong augment gang, or something worse? Zane's laugh was bitter, tinged with pain. Worse. Much worse. They stumbled, catching themselves against the tunnel wall. I was ED Internal Affairs. Level 7 clearance. Had access to Project Renaissance. Maya stopped so suddenly that Zane nearly collided with her. In the dim light, her face was a mask of controlled fury. Your enhanced division. You hunted people like me. I hunted augments who went rogue, Zane corrected, meeting her gaze steadily despite the pain etched across their features. The ED doesn't waste resources on pure humans. You're invisible to us, remember? It was always augments hunting augments, criminals with enhancement-grade reflexes and built-in weapons systems. I never touched a pure human in my life. The distinction mattered, but Maya's hand still rested on her weapon. Trust came hard in the urban anarchy, and ED badges, even former ones, carried too much blood to ignore easily. So what changed? Why are your former colleagues trying to turn you into scrap metal? Zane slumped against the tunnel wall, exhaustion finally overtaking them. Because I found out what Renaissance really is. What they're planning to do to both our species. They looked up at Maya with those green eyes that seemed too human for someone with neural ports. The augmentation divide isn't natural. It's engineered. And they're about to make it permanent. Maya crouched beside them, her curiosity warring with suspicion. Explain. The Enhancement Division isn't just law enforcement. It's population control. Renaissance is a bioengineered virus designed to target specific genetic markers, ones that only pure humans carry. Once it's released into the water supply, the underground cities won't be refuges anymore. They'll be tombs. The words hit Maya like physical blows. She'd known the world was broken, divided between human and post-human, but the idea that it was all orchestrated genocide made her stomach turn. You're lying. I wish I was. Zane reached into their jacket, moving slowly to avoid triggering Maya's defensive reflexes. They pulled out a data pad, its screen cracked but still functional. I downloaded everything before I ran. Technical specifications, deployment timelines, target demographics. Renaissance launches in 72 hours. Maya stared at the data pad as if it were a venomous snake. Taking it would mean accepting the truth of Zane's words, and the truth would demand action she wasn't sure she was capable of. Why tell me? Why risk exposure to save people who'll never even know your name? Because I've spent 3 years hunting augments who still had pieces of their humanity left. Criminals, yes, but people who were still fighting to hold on to something real in a world that wanted to strip it away. And I realized that the line between human and monster isn't drawn by enhancement, it's drawn by choice. Zane's hand moved to their temple, fingers tracing the edge of the neural ports. These interfaces? They're not weapons. They're communication arrays. I can tap into the ED network, access their tactical systems. But I can also shut them down, permanently if necessary. I kept the human parts that matter and took just enough machine to fight back. The sincerity in their voice was undeniable, but Maya had survived this long by trusting her instincts over her heart. Prove it. Without hesitation, Zane closed their eyes and activated the neural interface. The ports glowed with soft blue light, and suddenly the tunnel's emergency lighting shifted, responding to their wireless commands. Old speakers crackled to life, filled with fragments of ED communication traffic. Maya heard deployment orders, tactical assessments, and most chilling of all, countdown timers marking the hours until Renaissance deployment. When Zane opened their eyes again, the ports had dimmed to black metal once more. I can access their systems, but every time I do they get closer to finding me. The hunter-killers you destroyed were just the beginning. By dawn, they'll have half the ED's assault force in the Rust Quarter. Maya took the data pad, her fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled through files that detailed the systematic extermination of her species. Genetic markers, deployment vectors, casualty projections, it was all there, written in the cold language of military efficiency. 72 hours, she repeated. 71 now, Zane corrected. Maybe less. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sound of dripping water and the subtle hum of Zane's neural implants cycling through standby mode. Maya studied their face in the flickering light, searching for deception and finding only exhaustion and determination. There's an access point, she said finally. Underground entrance to the ED central server farm. It's guarded, but if we could get inside, we could upload a virus of our own, Zane finished. Corrupt Renaissance at the source, maybe even turn their own systems against them. They pushed themselves upright, wincing as weight settled on their injured leg. It would be suicide. The server farm is in the heart of the corporate sector. Even if we got in, we'd never get out. Maya smiled, and it was the first time in months that the expression felt genuine. You're thinking like an augment. All those enhancements make you visible to their sensors, trackable by their systems. But I'm pure human, remember? I'm invisible. And I'm ED Internal Affairs with access codes that could get us through the security barriers, Zane replied, understanding dawning in their eyes. We'd need each other. Partners? Maya agreed, extending her hand. Zane grasped it, their augmented strength carefully controlled to match her purely human grip. Partners. In that handshake, something new was born in the depths of the urban anarchy. Not just an alliance, but the beginning of something that transcended the artificial divisions their world had carved between human and posthuman. As they prepared to venture deeper into the tunnels toward the underground cities, neither could know that their partnership would become legend in the fragments of dawn breaking over their broken world. Descent into Sanctuary. The descent to New Haven took 4 hours through passages that human hands had carved from living rock and reinforced with salvaged materials. Maya led the way through the labyrinthine tunnels, her movements sure despite the complete absence of artificial light. Behind her, Zane struggled to adapt their augmented vision systems to the primitive conditions, neural interfaces flickering as they tried to process the electromagnetic void of the deep underground. The cities were built during the first enhancement wars, Maya explained, her voice a whisper that somehow carried clearly in the confined space. When the corporations started forcing augmentation on their workers, some people went underground rather than submit. Literally underground. They dug deep enough that the machines couldn't follow. Zane's hand traced the smooth wall, feeling the tool marks of decades-old excavation. How many cities are there? 7 that I know of. Maybe more. We don't communicate much between settlements, too dangerous. Each city is completely self-sufficient, or tries to be. Maya paused at a junction, checking markings that would be invisible to augmented sensors. New Haven is the largest. 20,000 people, all of them genetically pure. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, and Zane gasped despite themselves. New Haven stretched out below them, a marvel of human engineering that defied everything they thought they knew about the underground cities. Bioluminescent cultures provided gentle lighting along the carved streets, while hydroponic gardens created green terraces that climbed the cavern walls. The air was clean, filtered through biological systems that turned corporate pollution into breathable atmosphere. But it was the people that truly amazed Zane. Thousands of humans moved through the city streets, no chrome gleaming beneath their skin, no neural ports marking their temples, no enhancement scars anywhere on their bodies. Children played in public squares, their laughter echoing off stone walls. Elderly people sat on benches carved from living rock, watching the eternal dance of community life. It's beautiful, Zane whispered. It's dying, Maya replied, and now Zane could see past the surface beauty to the underlying problems. The people were too thin, their clothes patched and repatched. The hydroponic systems were struggling, many of the growing beds empty or producing sickly plants. The bioluminescent cultures were dim, conserving energy that was clearly in short supply. They made their way down carved staircases to the city proper. As they walked, Zane noticed the way people looked at them, curiosity turning to suspicion when they spotted the neural ports at Zane's temples. Whispers followed in their wake. Augment, someone hissed. Why did you bring Augment here? Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. The council will want to hear what they have to say. The council chamber occupied the heart of New Haven, its walls carved with the history of the underground cities. 7 figures sat around a crescent-shaped table, their ages ranging from middle-aged to ancient. These were the people who had lived through the enhancement wars, who had chosen exile over augmentation and somehow survived. Maya Chin, said the woman at the center of the crescent, her voice carrying the authority of absolute leadership. You were supposed to return with supplies, not this. Counselor Sarah Martinez was barely 50, but she carried herself with the weight of someone who had seen too much. Her eyes, sharp and uncompromising, fixed on Zane with undisguised hostility. Counsel Martinez, Maya began, but Zane stepped forward. My name is Zane Holloway. I'm former Enhanced Division Internal Affairs, and I have information about Project Renaissance that could save every person in this city. The reaction was immediate. Council members recoiled as if Zane had announced they were carrying a plague. 2 guards stepped forward, their weapons, crude but effective kinetic firearms, aimed at Zane's chest. "ED," spat Counsel Martinez. "We should kill you where you stand." "You should listen," Maya interjected, producing the data pad. "Renaissance isn't just another corporate initiative. It's targeted genocide." For the next 30 minutes, Zane outlined everything they knew about Renaissance while Maya presented the stolen files. The council members' expressions shifted from hostility to horror as the scope of the corporate plan became clear. Genetic targeting. Water supply contamination. Estimated casualties in the millions. "Even if this is true," said Counsel Martinez when the presentation was finished, "what can we do? We're isolated down here. We have no resources, no weapons that could challenge the corporations." "We have invisibility," Maya replied. "And we have someone with access to their systems." She gestured to Zane. "The server farm that controls Renaissance is in the corporate sector. It's heavily guarded against augmented intrusion, but pure humans. Are ghosts in their machines?" finished Counsel Martinez. "You're talking about a suicide mission." "I'm talking about survival," Maya shot back. 70 hours from now, Renaissance launches. When it does, these caverns become catacombs. Every pure human on the planet dies, and augmented humanity inherits the Earth. Unless we stop it. The debate that followed was heated but brief. In the end, the mathematics were undeniable. Action offered a slim chance of survival, while inaction guaranteed extinction. The council voted to support the mission, though Counsel Martinez abstained. As the meeting broke up, Zane found themselves alone with the council leader. "You don't trust me," they observed. "I don't trust anyone with machines in their head," Martinez replied bluntly. "But Maya does, and she's never been wrong about people." She studied Zane's face, searching for something. "Those neural ports, how much of your mind do they control?" "None of it," Zane answered honestly. "They're tools, nothing more. I chose the minimal enhancement package specifically to maintain my cognitive independence." "And if you had to choose between saving an augmented life and a pure human life?" Zane was quiet for a long moment, considering the weight of the question. "I've been making that choice for 3 years as ED Internal Affairs. I chose to save augmented lives because they were still lives, regardless of their enhancement status. Now I'm risking everything to save pure humans for the same reason." Martinez nodded slowly. "Maya was right about you. Get some rest, you'll need it for what's coming." As Zane left the chamber, they passed through the city streets one more time. Children watched them with the fearless curiosity of innocence, while adults kept their distance but no longer showed open hostility. These people were preparing to trust them with their species' survival. At the city's edge, Maya waited beside a hidden arsenal that the council had revealed, weapons and equipment stockpiled for a war they'd hoped never to fight. "Ready?" she asked. Zane looked back at New Haven one last time, memorizing the site of pure humanity's last refuge. Tomorrow they would ascend to the surface and attempt something that would either save their species or destroy them both. "Ready?" In the artificial twilight of the underground city, partnership deepened into something approaching love, not just between two people, but between two ways of being human that the world above had declared incompatible. Surface tensions. Dawn broke like shattered glass over the urban anarchy, painting the sky in shades of orange and electric blue as Zane and Maya emerged from the underground. The corporate sector loomed ahead of them across 5 kilometers of gang territory, its towers piercing the clouds like chrome and steel needles. Between their position in the Rust Quarter and their destination lay the most dangerous real estate on the planet. Maya checked her equipment one final time: rail pistol, plasma charges, hacking tools cobbled together from salvaged corporate tech. Everything she carried was deliberately low-tech, invisible to the sophisticated sensors that would blanket their route. Beside her, Zane synchronized their neural interfaces with the stolen ED access codes, preparing to become a living key that could unlock the corporate sector's defenses. "The neon serpents control the first 2 kilometers," Maya said, consulting a hand-drawn map. Their territory ends at the old factory complex. After that, we're in neutral ground until we hit corporate security. Zane nodded, but their attention was focused on the tactical display streaming through their neural implants. ED patrol patterns have changed. They're concentrating forces around the server farm. Someone knows we're coming. Or someone suspects. Either way, we stick to the plan. Ghost protocol through gang territory, then you get us past corporate security while I handle the technical side. They moved out into the morning chaos of the urban anarchy, two figures against a backdrop of technological madness. The Neon Serpent's territory was a maze of light-bending installations that turned solid buildings into optical illusions. Gang members flickered in and out of visibility, their augmented camouflage systems creating a constant state of visual uncertainty. Maya navigated by sound and scent, her purely human senses allowing her to track the gangers despite their technological advantages. Zane followed, their enhanced reflexes keeping pace while their neural interfaces monitored ED communications traffic. The hunter-killers were still searching, but they were looking in the wrong places. Movement 2 o'clock, Zane whispered, their voice carrying an electronic undertone that made Maya's skin prickle. Through their tactical display, they could see 3 Serpent scouts approaching their position. Maya pressed herself against a partially demolished wall, her natural heat signature masked by the ambient warmth of the urban environment. The scouts passed within meters of her position, their augmented vision systems scanning for threats that registered on their technological spectrum. She was invisible to them, a ghost in their digital world. But Zane was not. The lead scout's head snapped toward their position, cybernetic eye zooming in on the neural interface ports that marked Zane as enhanced. Contact. Unknown augment, Sector 7 Alpha. The firefight erupted in seconds. Plasma bolts carved molten scars across concrete while Maya and Zane dove for cover behind a collapsed hovercar. The Serpent's light-bending technology made them difficult targets, but Zane's tactical display could track their movement patterns and predict their positions. Can you get a lock? Maya asked, her rail pistol charging with its distinctive whine. Working on it, Zane replied, their neural interfaces cycling through targeting algorithms. Their camouflage systems are good, but they're not perfect. There. Maya fired where Zane indicated, and her rail projectile punched through the Serpent Scout's light-bending field. The impact sent the gangers spinning into a concrete barrier, their camouflage system failing in a cascade of sparks. The remaining scouts fell back, but their comms traffic was lighting up the local networks. Within minutes, every Serpent in a 5-block radius would know their position. We need to move, Maya said, already gathering her gear. They ran through the optical maze of Serpent territory, pursued by gangers who flickered like ghosts at the edge of vision. Maya's purely human perception adapted quickly to the disorienting environment, while Zane's augmented systems struggled with the constant visual contradictions. There. Zane pointed to a section of street where the light-bending effects seemed less concentrated. That's either a trap or a weak point in their coverage. Only one way to find out. They sprinted across the open ground, drawing fire from multiple directions. Maya felt the heat of a plasma bolt pass centimeters from her face, but they made it to cover behind a derelict transport vehicle. The factory complex that marked the edge of Serpent territory was visible ahead, a cluster of abandoned industrial buildings that had become no man's land in the gang wars. Neural interface activity, Zane warned, their eyes unfocusing as they accessed ED communications. They're mobilizing additional hunter-killer units. Someone leaked our destination. Maya's blood ran cold. Internal leak? Has to be. The timing is too perfect. Zane's expression hardened. We have maybe an hour before the corporate sector becomes completely impenetrable. They reached the factory complex as the sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows between the industrial ruins. Here, in the neutral ground between gang territories, they encountered evidence of the urban anarchy's true cost. Bodies lay scattered among the machinery, augmented and unaugmented alike, all of them casualties of a war that had no winners. Maya paused beside one corpse, a young woman whose neural ports had been torn out by some kind of explosive decompression. She was barely 18. Augmentation starts young in the corporate sector, Zane said softly. Enhancement packages are mandatory for all employees over 16. She probably never had a choice. The observation hung between them as they continued through the factory complex. Here was the real tragedy of their divided world. Not just the conflict between human and post-human, but the way that conflict had stolen choice from an entire generation. Zane, Maya said as they approached the corporate sector's outer perimeter, after this is over, If we survive, what happens to us? To people like us? Zane was quiet for a moment, their neural interfaces painting tactical overlays across their vision while their human consciousness wrestled with questions that had no algorithms. I don't know, they admitted. Maybe we build something new. Something that isn't about human versus augmented, but about choosing who we want to be. The corporate sector's defensive perimeter loomed ahead, energy barriers, sensor networks, and automated gun turrets that could track and eliminate any threat in microseconds. Beyond that, the server farm that controlled Project Renaissance waited like a steel and silicon heart pumping poison into the world's bloodstream. Ready? Maya asked, checking her equipment one final time. Zane activated their neural interfaces, feeling the familiar electric tingle as they connected to the corporate security network. Let's go save the world. Together, they stepped toward the barrier that separated the urban anarchy from corporate control, carrying between them the hopes of two species and the fragile possibility that love could bridge the technological divide that threatened to destroy them all. Corporate infiltration. The corporate sector's perimeter barrier hummed with barely contained energy, a wall of force that could vaporize an unaugmented human in milliseconds. Maya pressed herself against the concrete bunker that served as their final approach point, watching the patterns of security sweeps through her night vision scope. Guard rotations, sensor sweeps, automated defense systems. Everything followed the rigid precision that corporate efficiency demanded. Neural link established, Zane whispered, their ports glowing soft blue as they interfaced with the security network. Access codes are still valid, but barely. Someone's been purging ED clearances systematically. We have maybe 20 minutes before my credentials get revoked. Maya studied the tactical display Zane projected onto a salvaged tablet, a real-time map of the corporate sector's defenses with their intrusion route highlighted in red. The server farm lay at the heart of the district, surrounded by concentric layers of security that would challenge even a full military assault. Phase 1, Maya said, checking her equipment. You get me through the perimeter. Phase 2, I become invisible while you handle the digital security. Phase 3, we upload the virus and get out before they realize what happened. Phase 4, Zane added grimly, we survive long enough to see if it worked. The first barrier deactivated at Zane's neural command, creating a temporary gap in the energy field. Maya slipped through like smoke, her purely human signature invisible to the sensors that painted the world in digital overlays. Behind her, Zane followed, their augmented reflexes keeping pace while their consciousness split between physical movement and cyberspace navigation. Corporate security operated on the assumption that any serious threat would be technologically advanced. Augmented infiltrators with enhanced capabilities and digital signatures that their systems were designed to detect. They weren't prepared for the ghost-like presence of a pure human moving through their technological maze. Maya reached the first checkpoint, a scanning station that could identify augmented individuals by their implant signatures. The guard, a heavily modified corporate security officer with silver skin and crimson optical implants, never looked up from his display console as she passed through the blind spot in his sensors. Checkpoint Alpha clear, she whispered into her throat mic. Confirmed, Zane replied, their voice carrying the electronic distortion of active neural interface. I'm showing green across all monitoring stations. The system thinks you're a data ghost, a sensor malfunction. They moved deeper into the corporate sector, past gleaming towers that housed the administrative apparatus of post-human civilization. Here, the division between augmented and pure human wasn't just philosophical, it was architectural. Buildings designed for enhanced senses and reflexes, with passages too narrow for unaugmented bodies and control interfaces that required neural implants to operate. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that her genetic purity made her perfectly adapted to infiltrate a world that considered her obsolete. Server farm 2 clicks ahead, Zane reported. But we have a problem. They've activated the Prometheus protocol. Maya's blood ran cold. Prometheus was the corporate sector's ultimate security measure, a complete shutdown of all external access points, turning the server farm into an impenetrable digital fortress. How long before it's fully deployed? 15 minutes. Once Prometheus goes active, not even my access codes will matter. We'll be locked out permanently. They broke into a run, abandoning stealth for speed as they raced through corporate streets that gleamed with artificial perfection. Behind them, Maya could hear the distinctive whine of hunter-killers launching from security stations, their mechanical voices echoing off glass and steel as they began systematic search patterns. The server farm rose ahead of them like a technological mountain, its cooling towers venting streams of heated air that created micro-weather systems in the surrounding streets. The building's surface was a seamless blend of armor plating and sensor arrays, with no obvious entry points visible to unaugmented vision. Service tunnel, Zane said, their neural interfaces parsing architectural schematics in real time. Maintenance access on the north face. It's not guarded. Corporate security assumes no one can get this close without triggering their detection grid. They found the tunnel entrance hidden behind a facade of decorative paneling. Zane's access codes opened the sealed hatch, revealing a narrow passage that snaked into the server farm's depths. The air inside was thick with ozone and the constant hum of quantum processors working at temperatures approaching absolute zero. "This is it," Maya said as they reached the central processing chamber. Before them stretched a cavern filled with servers that pulsed with the heartbeat of corporate civilization. Every transaction, every command, every piece of data that flowed through the corporate sector passed through this room. And somewhere in those quantum matrices, Project Renaissance waited to be unleashed. Maya connected her jury-rigged interface to the primary access terminal while Zane's neural implants created a bridge between her purely human consciousness and the digital realm beyond. For a moment she felt what it was like to be augmented, her awareness expanding into cyberspace, touching data streams that flowed like rivers of light. "There," Zane whispered, their voice echoing in both physical and digital space. "Renaissance Protocols tertiary backup server. I can access it, but the security's active. The moment I start the upload, every system in the corporate sector will know we're here." Maya's fingers flew over the interface controls, uploading the virus they'd created in the depths of New Haven. A piece of code that would turn Renaissance's genetic targeting against itself, corrupting the deployment vectors and rendering the bioweapon harmless. "Upload initiated," she reported. Revolution's edge. The escape from the corporate sector became a running battle through streets that pulsed with the rhythm of technological supremacy. Maya and Zane fled through service tunnels and maintenance shafts while corporate security converged on their position with methodical efficiency. Behind them, the server farm burned with the digital fire of their successful intrusion, corruption spreading through Renaissance's control systems like a virus through a bloodstream. 2 clicks to the perimeter, Zane gasped, their neural ports still smoking from the overload they'd endured. Blood ran down their temples, but their eyes remained focused, human consciousness reasserting control over damaged augmentations. "But they've sealed the primary exits. We'll have to go through the industrial district." Maya checked their route on the tactical display, noting the concentration of security forces between their position and freedom. Industrial means automated defenses. Laser grids, hunter-killers, the full corporate arsenal. It also means chaos. Factories, refineries, chemical plants. Lots of ways to disappear if you know how to move like a ghost. They emerged from the service tunnels into the industrial district as the sun reached its zenith, casting sharp shadows between massive processing facilities. The air here was thick with synthetic compounds and the ozone scent of heavy machinery. This was where the corporate sector's clean technological facade gave way to the brutal reality of post-human industry. Facilities designed for augmented workers who could function in environments that would kill unaugmented humans in minutes. Maya wrapped a salvaged respirator around her face while Zane's augmented respiratory system automatically filtered the toxic atmosphere. "Stay close," she warned. "The sensor networks here are designed to track enhanced individuals, but they might pick up your neural signatures anyway." They moved through the industrial maze like shadows, avoiding the main thoroughfares where hunter-killer patrols swept with increasing frequency. Maya's purely human intuition navigated the dangerous landscape while Zane's damaged neural interfaces provided fragmentary tactical data. Enough to avoid the worst threats, not enough to guarantee their safety. "Processing plant ahead," Zane warned, their voice distorted by the strain of operating on failing augmentations. "High-energy manufacturing. If we can get through it, we'll be at the perimeter." The facility loomed before them like a technological cathedral, its towers reaching toward the sky while streams of molten metal flowed through transparent conduits. Inside, automated systems performed the delicate alchemy of post-human engineering, converting raw materials into the enhancement packages that defined their world. Maya found an access hatch that her small, unaugmented frame could squeeze through. "Maintenance crawlway. It'll take us through the core processing area, but the radiation levels." "I can handle it," Zane said, though their neural ports were still bleeding. "Enhanced physiology has some advantages." They crawled through the narrow passage as industrial processes churned around them. Through gaps in the metal grating, Maya could see the automated production lines creating neural interfaces, synthetic organs and cybernetic limbs with ruthless precision. This was the heart of the enhancement industry, the factory that turned humans into something else. Motion sensors, Zane whispered as they reached an intersection in the crawlway. 3 hunter-killers in the main production area. They're scanning for heat signatures. Maya pressed herself against the cool metal of the ventilation system, her natural body temperature masked by the ambient heat of the industrial processes. But Zane's augmented metabolism ran hotter, their enhanced cardiovascular system designed for peak performance rather than concealment. "I'll draw them off," Zane said, preparing to activate their neural interfaces despite the damage. "You get to the perimeter access." "No." Maya's hand found theirs in the darkness of the crawlway. "We do this together or not at all." For a moment, their fingers intertwined, augmented and pure, warm flesh and enhanced strength, two different expressions of humanity finding connection in the space between heartbeats. In that touch, the artificial divisions of their world seemed meaningless. Emergency cooling system, Maya realized, studying the facility schematics through Zane's damaged displays. "If we trigger it, the temperature differential will mask our heat signatures long enough to reach the exit." Zane's smile was visible even in the dim light filtering through the access grates. "You think like a saboteur. I learned from the best ghost in the urban anarchy." Maya interfaced with the facility's environmental controls through her jury-rigged equipment while Zane provided access codes that their failing neural systems could barely transmit. The cooling system activated with a rush of super-chilled air that turned their breath to vapor and sent temperature readings throughout the facility into chaos. They moved through the confusion like wraiths, their passage masked by the environmental disruption. Behind them, hunter-killers spun in circles, their thermal sensors overwhelmed by the temperature fluctuations. Emergency alarms blared as automated systems tried to compensate for what appeared to be a catastrophic cooling system failure. The perimeter fence appeared ahead of them, its energy barrier flickering as the facility's power grid struggled with the cooling system overload. For a few seconds, the barrier weakened enough for Maya to slip through. Zane followed, their augmented reflexes carrying them across the threshold just as the energy field stabilized. They were back in the urban anarchy, but their freedom came with a cost. Behind them, the corporate sector had locked down completely, its defenses hardened against any further intrusion. Somewhere in those gleaming towers, corporate executives were discovering that Project Renaissance had been compromised, its genetic targeting corrupted beyond repair. "We did it," Maya said, hardly believing the words. "We actually stopped them." Zane nodded, but their expression was troubled. "Renaissance was just the beginning. They'll develop something else, some other way to eliminate pure humans from the equation." This was a battle, not the war. As they walked back toward the Rust Quarter and the hidden entrances to New Haven, Maya felt the weight of that truth. They had saved her people, but the fundamental conflict between human and post-human remained unresolved. The urban anarchy would continue its chaotic dance of survival and violence. The underground cities would remain refuges built on scarcity and isolation. But something had changed in the space between them. Two people from different worlds had found common ground, and in that connection, Maya glimpsed the possibility of a future where the boundaries between human and post-human might blur rather than harden. "What happens now?" she asked as the familiar chaos of gang territory surrounded them. Zane was quiet for a moment, their damaged neural interfaces flickering as they processed the question. "Now we build something new. Not human versus augmented, but human and augmented. Together." The sun was setting as they reached the entrance to the underground passages. New dawn. 3 months after Renaissance died in the corporate sector's quantum servers, Maya stood at the edge of New Haven's expansion project, watching pure humans and augmented refugees work side by side to carve new chambers from living rock. The sight would have been impossible before their mission. Augmented individuals had never been allowed in the underground cities, and pure humans had been too afraid to trust anyone with chrome beneath their skin. Zane emerged from one of the new tunnels, dirt on their clothes and satisfaction in their eyes. The neural ports at their temples had healed cleanly, though they bore permanent scars from the server farm overload. More importantly, those ports now served a different purpose, not as weapons or surveillance tools, but as communication bridges between augmented and unaugmented workers. "The ventilation system for Sector 7 is online," Zane reported, pulling off work gloves that protected their enhanced hands from the rough stone. "Air quality should improve within the week." Maya smiled, noting how easily Zane had adapted to life in the underground cities. They had become something new, not quite the enhanced division operative they'd once been, but not fully human in the traditional sense either. They were living proof that the boundaries between human and post-human were more fluid than either side had believed. "Council Martinez wants to see us," Maya said. "The delegation from New Tokyo has arrived." They walked through streets that buzzed with unprecedented activity. Children, both pure human and those with minimal augmentations, played together in the public squares. Elderly humans shared stories with augmented refugees who had fled the corporate sector's increasing authoritarianism. Most remarkably, romantic relationships had begun to form across the enhancement divide, creating bonds that transcended the artificial categories their world had imposed. The council chamber had been expanded to accommodate representatives from 6 underground cities and 12 augmented communities that had declared independence from corporate control. What had started as a desperate alliance to stop Renaissance had grown into something approaching a new civilization, one that chose cooperation over conflict, diversity over purity. "The surface situation is stabilizing," reported Councillor Martinez to the assembled delegates. "Without Renaissance as a threat, several corporate sector communities have declared neutrality in the human-post-human conflict. Gang warfare in the urban anarchy has decreased by 30% as resources become available for trade rather than survival." Maya and Zane took their seats at the table, their partnership now formalized as co-leaders of the Surface Integration Project. Their mission: to establish permanent communities on the surface where human and augmented individuals could coexist openly, without the fear that had driven both groups underground. "The Tokyo delegation brings promising news," continued Martinez. 3 Asian corporate sectors have agreed to pilot programs allowing pure humans to work in their facilities without mandatory augmentation. Representative Akira Tanaka, whose subtle neural enhancements glowed softly beneath translucent skin, nodded respectfully to Maya. "The pure human safety protocols you developed have proven effective. Our corporations are discovering that unaugmented workers bring perspectives that our enhanced employees lack." It was true. Maya's natural intuition and pattern recognition had revolutionized several manufacturing processes, while her invisibility to digital surveillance made her invaluable for security assessments. Across the rebuilt communities, pure humans were finding roles that their unique capabilities made them ideally suited for. "What about resistance?" asked Zane, their voice carrying the electronic undertone that marked active neural interface use. "Corporate leadership can't be happy about losing their monopoly on human enhancement." Tanaka's expression darkened. "There is opposition. Hardline corporate factions are developing new enhancement packages designed to be incompatible with pure human biology. They call it the purity barrier, technology that would make human-augmented cooperation impossible." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Another bioweapon, another attempt to enforce the artificial divisions that fed corporate power. But this time Maya and Zane weren't facing the threat alone. "We have allies now," Maya observed, gesturing to the diverse group around the table. "Pure human communities with resources and knowledge. Augmented groups with technical capabilities. Corporate defectors with inside information. They can't divide us the way they could before Renaissance." Over the following hours, they planned their response to the purity barrier threat. Unlike their desperate infiltration of the server farm, this would be a coordinated effort involving multiple communities and approaches. Diplomatic pressure, economic leverage, and if necessary, direct action by teams like Maya and Zane. As the meeting concluded, Maya and Zane walked through the expanded chambers of New Haven, past workshops where human craftspeople collaborated with augmented engineers, past gardens where modified atmospheric processors created breathable air from corporate pollution, past schools where children learned that diversity of capability was strength, not weakness. "Do you ever miss it?" Maya asked as they reached their shared quarters, a space that had been designed for 2 people who came from different worlds but had chosen to build a new one together. The simplicity of clear divisions? Human versus post-human, us versus them? Zane considered the question while their neural interfaces cycled through their daily reports. Communication traffic from the surface, resource allocation for the expansion project, coordination with other underground cities. Sometimes, they admitted, it was easier when the world made sense in simple categories. But easier isn't better. Maya nodded, understanding. Their relationship had required both of them to abandon certainties that had once defined their identities. She was no longer simply a pure human fighting for species survival, and Zane was no longer an augmented operative serving corporate interests. They were something new, partners in the truest sense, building a future that neither could have imagined alone. Outside their window, New Haven's artificial day cycle was beginning its transition to evening, the bioluminescent cultures dimming to mimic the natural rhythms that pure humans needed for psychological health. In other chambers, augmented individuals gathered around quantum processors that required no rest, their enhanced consciousness comfortable with the eternal electronic day of their technology. Both communities thrived, no longer in spite of their differences but because of them. The Purity Barrier project launches in 6 months, Zane said, reviewing intelligence reports through their neural link. If they succeed, everything we've built here becomes impossible. The enhancement divide becomes permanent. Then we stop them, Maya replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had already performed one impossible feat, just like we stopped Renaissance. Together? Always together. As New Haven settled into its artificial night, Maya and Zane planned their next mission, not as desperate fugitives racing against extinction, but as leaders of a new civilization that chose cooperation over conflict, love over fear, and unity over the artificial divisions that had once seemed insurmountable. In the depths of the earth, where human hands had carved sanctuary from stone and determination, the fragments of dawn they had saved continued to grow, not into the blazing certainty of a new day, but into the gentle, persistent light of hope that could illuminate even the darkest corners of their divided world. The war between human and post-human was not over, but it was no longer the only story being written. In the spaces between certainty and doubt, between flesh and chrome, between the underground cities and the urban anarchy above, love had planted seeds of possibility that would grow into something neither side had imagined. A future where the question wasn't whether humanity would survive its transformation, but how beautifully it might evolve when fear no longer dictated the terms of that evolution. Their story continued, written in the language of partnership across the technological divide, in the syntax of hope, and in the grammar of love that transcended every boundary their world had tried to build between heart and circuit, soul and system, human and post-human alike. The end.